I'm Vanda Kristanti. We are from fourth group. In these sessions, we will explain about what is logic, what is propositions, what are the functions of logic in daily life, what are the types of propositions and logic. Okay, I will explain about logic first. What is logic? Logic comes from the Greek word which means the result of reasoning expressed through words and expressed in language. As a science, logic is called logic episteme, or the science of logic, which studies the ability to think straight, precise, and orderly. Science here refers to the rational ability to know, and skill refers to the ability of the mind to put the knowledge into action. There are logic explanations according to the expert. First, Khalid Narbuko said, logic is the science of the principles, rules, laws, structures, or forms of the human mind that can lead these truths to a truth. From this, we can conclude that logic is not an activity of remembering, but a process of reasoning. In the second, Abu Ahmadi said, logic is a systematic study of general principles that determine the unity of how to draw conclusions on the problem discussed. From this, we know that logic must be systematic and logic can be a way to solve the problems. Logic is a part of philosophy that discusses the nature of accuracy, a way of organizing truth that can describe the accuracy of knowledge. So, right is not necessarily true, while true always has a proper basis. Logic as a branch of philosophy. Practical here means logic can be practiced in daily life. Logic was born together with the birth of philosophy in Greek. In an effort to put forth their thoughts and opinions, ancient Greek philosophers often tried to refute others' ideas by pointing out the fallacy of their reasoning. Logic is used to the proof. Logic tells which form of inference are valid and which are not. Traditionally, logic is studied as a branch of philosophy, but it can also be considered a branch of mathematics. There are two types of logic. First, natural logic, and the second, scientific logic. First, natural logic is the performance of the human mind that thinks correctly and strictly before being influenced by subjective desire and tendencies. It is logical skills based on the innate ability of the human mind. The ability of natural human logic exists from birth, which is based on experience. Artificialist or scientist logic contains an arrangement of laws, standards, and formulas for straight thinking. Thanks to the help of this scientist logic, the man can work more precisely, more accurately, more easily, and more safely. Scientist logic is intended to avoid misguidance or, at the very least, reduce essentially the result of laboratory research. Okay everyone, there are various branches of logic. One of them is propositional logic. Propositional logic focuses on statements that have a true or false value. With propositional logic, we will be able to determine the truth value, it means true or false, of many real sentences just by testing or observing their form.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Pinti Pratamasari. I will continue explain our material. In this section, I will present about proposition. The first is definition of proposition. By Aristotelian logic, a categorical exposition as a sentence which affirms or denies a predicate of subject, optionally with have a copula. We can see example. There are two sentences. The first sentence is all men are mortal, and the second sentence Socrates is a man. From the first sentence, all men is subject and are as copula. In the second sentence, Socrates as subject is as copula. So, uh, subject is person, place, or thing that is performing the action of a sentence. And the subject represents what or whom the sentence is about. Subject is usually come before the verb. From and copula to connect subject and complement and copula that describe the condition that the thing or person referred to by the subject. So from definition and from the example we can conclude a proposition is a sentence contain subject and copula. For the second definition by the logic positivist, propositions are also spoken of as the content of belief and similar intentional attitudes. We can see example. There are two statements. The first statement, I desire that I have a new car. From the statement, the speaker desire if she or he have a new car. And the second statement, I wonder whether it will snow. So it means that the speaker wonder how if the weather snow. uh, from definition and from the example, we can get conclude proposition is a statement based on desire, belief, doubt, preferences, and hope. For the third definition by Bertrand Russell, propositions are set of possible views, however, than all mathematical truth. We can see example 3 plus 3 equals 6. It means that we can get concludes proposition like mathematical logic and proposition a statement based on the church. For example, all of people can state the statement is true. And for the last definition from in logic and linguistic, proposition is the meaning of declarative sentence. What is the declarative sentence? Declarative sentence is a sentence that makes a statement, provide a fact, of offer and explain or convey information. It is written in the present tense and usually end with a period. Normally, the subject comes before the verb. Um, from the definition, therefore, the definition, we can get conclude a preposition is the statement referred to true or false in our logic or thinking. So, if you believe the statement is true, it is a fact. So, if you can believe the statement is true, so it is not a fact. And for the next, about the differences of sentence and proposition. Uh, Proposition sound like sentence, but they have different role and different criteria. We can see the differences on the table. And the first, the unit or some language for the sentence, and for the proposition is the unit of logic. And sentence expressed in all tenses, present, past, and future, but in proposition always come in present tense. Sentence not able explain quantity and quality, but proposition can explain quantity and quality. Sentence may be exclamatory, negative, interrogative, repetitive, informative, and etc. But in proposition, only indicative sentence. In sentence, all kind of sentence are not proposition, but all proposition are sentence. Sentence are governed by its own grammar, but proposition are language natural. Sentence are correct, incorrect, pure or impure. In proposition must be either true or false. Sentence are may be either true or false, but propositions are regarded as the material of our reasoning. From the differences of sentence and proposition, we can distinguish based on their characteristics. And for the last section about component of preposition or term. There are three components of preposition: the first subject term, and the second predicate term, and the last copula. Subject term, assertion or denying something, and predicate term, assertion or denying of what. And for the copula, it is divided as negative or informative. It is become between subject and predicate term. We can see, for example, there is statement: a dog is an animal. For a dog as subject, and for is a copula, and animal as predicate. From the statement above, we can say it is a proposition because the statement is general information. We can, if you say proposition, if you believe that is a fact, so the value of the proposition is true. If you believe that is not a fact, so the value of proposition is false. I think that's all from me. I'm sorry for our mistake, and for the next section will be delivered by Agung.
Okay, good day. I will continue our presentation. My name is Agung Negara, and I will explain about entailment and presupposition. Okay, first, entailment. Entailment is a relationship between sentences. Entailment is a relationship that applies between two sentences, which the truth of one implies the other truth because of the meanings of the words bound by Goddard's 1998. And according to Hassa 2016, entailment is a relationship between two sentences or propositions, which the truth of one sentence implies the truth of the other since both of them involve with the meaning of words. Entailments are focused on the sentence only, not the context. And the last is according to Musfera 2015. An entailment is a thing which logically relates from what is asserted in utterance or a sentence. Okay, next is the examples of entailments, which the sentences has relationship each other. Okay, the example number 1, Achilles killed Hector, and Hector died. Number 2 is Bob has a Lamborghini, and Bob has a car. We know that Lamborghini is a car. And number 3 is we caught a shark, and we caught a fish. Also, we can know that shark is included as a fish. And the last is number 4, mother made a pudding, and mother made something. We can say something in B sentence is a pudding in A sentence. Okay, next is truth functional. In every entailment, there is a truth functional. Is known as a function or effect of the entailments is to predict the truth value of the sentences. The truth value, there are two truth values. there are true or false, and also there is colored negation, which negation can be said as a negative sentence by Soviet Chapman 2000. Okay, there is a truth table for entailment from Said 2019. Okay, I will read it. The formula is, if P is true, then key is false, and then if P is false, then the key can be true or false. If key is false, then the P is also false. And the last is, if key is true and P can be true or false. That's the formula of truth table for entailment from Said 2019. Okay, we can look at the example of A. There are three sentences. That the first is, thief breaks the glass. The second is, thief breaks something, and the third is, the glass is broken. We can look at the sentences from 1 to 3 entails each other. If one is true, then the number 2 and 3 is also true. They entails each other. And for the B example, there are 4 sentences. The first one is, Bob has a Lamborghini, and the second is, Bob has a car, and number 3, Bob doesn't has a car. It's a negation sentence. And number 4 or the last is, Bob live in boarding house. Okay, from number B example of B, we can say that number 1 and 2 is entails each other, and we can conclude that if 1 is true, then 2 also true. And how about we entails number 1 and number 3? Number 1, 2, and number 3. If number 3 is true, then number 1 and 2 is false. The vice versa, if number 1 and 2 is true, then number 3 is false. How about number 4? Number 4 said that Bob lived in boarding house. If we entails number 4 with number 1 or 2 or 3, it has no relationship between them, or there is no entails, because the number 1, 2, and 3 talk about the car or Lamborghini, and number 4 is talk about the live of Bob in boarding house. So the truth value of number 4 between the others, number 1, 2, or 3, there is no truth values between them. Okay, next is presupposition. Presupposition is the speaker's assume towards the sentence of utterance. Based on Muspera 2015, presupposition is something that the speaker believes to be the case priority to make an utterance, which the speakers have the presuppositions, not the sentences. And that means it depends on the speaker's subjective assume, and all of the presupposition can be wrong. When faced with negation, presupposition will still remain true even the statement is negate. Okay, and there is a table of composite truth by Said 2009, in Guthrie 2015, also in Xavier 2018. Okay, the table said that if P is true, and then the key is also true, and if P is false, then the key is still true. And the last is, if key is true, and then the P can be true or false. Okay, the example is, Susan's brother bought 6 camels. So from this sentence, the speaker can make presupposition like A, B, C, and D. A is, Susan is exists. So from the sentence, Susan's brothers bought 6 camels, the speaker assumed that Susan is exists. And the second is, Susan has brother. And number C is, Susan's brothers is rich. Why? Because the speakers assume that the Susan's brother bought 6 camels, which means the Susan's brother is rich. And the last is, Susan and her brother live in Western Asia, Saudi Arabia. Why? Because the speaker will assume that if the Susan's brother bought a camel, it means that He lives in Saudi Arabia or Western Asia. Okay, next is type of presupposition. There are 6 types of presupposition. First is existential. The second is factive. The third is lexical. Fourth, structure. And fifth is non-factive. And the last is counterfactual. Okay, the first is existential presupposition. The speaker expects about the existence of the subject or object named or state in the sentence or utterance. The example, her cat. That means the speaker can assume she has a cat. Okay, the second is factive presupposition. Some verbs or construction told which something is fact. The example, he didn't aware she was ill. That means she was ill. And then they regret talking to him. That means they talked to him. You weren't realized that we were married. So the speaker assumed that we already married or we were married. And number 4 is it isn't strange that she come late. That the speaker assume or presupposition that presuppose that she come late. And number 5 or the last is I'm sad it's already over. So that means that it's already over. And the third is lexical presupposition. In case that from one sentence the speaker understand it by another form of the sentences, which is taken by the speaker presuppose and an unstated assume after the truth or sentence already state. Example, number 1, she stopped playing piano. That means she used to play piano before. And number 2, they began to criticizing. That means they weren't criticizing before. And number 3 or the last is you have a bad mark again. That means that you were have a bad mark before. Okay, number 4 is structural presupposition. Assumptions relate with the use of specific words and phrases. Example, just like the which age question. This presupposition can pursue the listener to believe which the information that presented is true, than just from the proposition that asked by person. Example, number 1, when did she go to the Madagascar? That means that we can presuppose or assume that she went to Madagascar. And the second is, where did you pick the dictionary? That means that we can assume, or the speaker can assume, you picked the dictionary. And the last is, when did she came home? We can presuppose that she came home. Okay, number 5 is non-factive presupposition. The preposition. Okay, number 5 is non-factive presupposition. The presupposition is not to be true. The verbs like dream, imagine, and pretend are used in this presupposition. Example, I dreamed that I was handsome. That means I was not handsome. And number 2 is they imagine that they were in Bali. That means they were not in Bali. And number 3, she pretends to be okay. That means she's not okay. Okay, the last types of presupposition is counterfactual. Means the assumption is not true. And also contrary fact. The prediction followed by the word if. Example, if you were my best friend, you would have helped me. That means that we can assume you are not my best friend. And number 2, if I were smart, I wouldn't be in trouble. That means we can presuppose that I was not smart. Okay, the last is differences, entailment, and presupposition. The proposition, the utterance is made from the speaker's assume, while the entailment logically assert in utterance. And presupposition, the speaker has presupposition, not the sentence, while the entailment has sentence. And in presupposition, more speaker hanging idea. And in entailment, naturally logic and debaters. Okay, I think that's all from my explanation about entailment and presupposition. If there is something wrong and out of topic or offline from my explanation, I'm so sorry. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. Okay, then the conclusion, proposition logic is a set of arguments or sentences that have a value of true or false. Propositional logic is a language of abstract sentences that are given valid or contradictory or equivalent values. With propositional logic, we will be able to determine the truth value, true or false, of many real sentences just by testing or observing their forms. Okay, thank you very much.